Tears stained her tiny face as she was pushed out of the mansion, her little hands clutching a torn teddy bear. No neighbor dared to help, and the cold door slammed behind her. 7-year-old Lily fell to her knees, begging in silence. Suddenly, the front gate burst open. Her father, a determined millionaire, stood there, eyes blazing. He extended his hand and whispered, "From now on, you come with me." A flicker of hope sparked in the darkness. But why was this innocent child abandoned? Could her life really change from this moment? Rain streaked down the glass walls of the Harper estate, like tiny silver knives, each drop echoing Daniel Grayson's growing unease. At 38, he had learned to endure stress quietly, but tonight the weight of betrayal pressed against his chest like a leaden stone. His daughter Lily, just 8 years old, sat curled on the edge of the worn sofa, clutching a small, stuffed fox, as though it were her only lifeline. Outside, the storm battered the streets of Willowbrook, a quiet, fog-bound town that had long been untouched by real chaos. Yet chaos had found them anyway. Daniel's hands shook slightly as he opened the envelope that had arrived that morning. It was written in cold, precise handwriting he recognized instantly. His late father's lawyer, whom he had trusted without question, had turned against him. The contents revealed a twisted clause in the family trust one that could transfer control of the estate and Lily's future into the hands of Daniel's estranged cousin, Vanessa, under the pretense of temporary guardianship. Vanessa, a woman he had thought long vanished from his life, had re-emerged with a bright smile and a charm that had ensnared his father in his final months. Daniel swallowed hard, forcing himself to breathe steadily. He had always believed in fairness, in doing right by those he loved, but this felt like a trap he could not avoid. The betrayal cut deep, not only from Vanessa, but from the system he had trusted the lawyers who were supposed to protect the family's intentions. It was more than property or money. It was about control, security, and the fragile world he had built for Lily after her mother's death 5 years ago. Lily looked up at him with wide, uncomprehending eyes. "Daddy, are we in trouble?" she asked softly, her voice barely rising above the rain. Daniel's throat tightened. He knelt beside her, brushing damp strands of hair from her face. "No, sweetheart," he said, though the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. "We're figuring things out. I promise I'll protect you." The flickering candle on the mantel beside a framed photo of his late wife, Anna, cast a warm glow over the room, offering a fragile sense of hope. Daniel stared at her face, memorizing every line, every hint of strength that she had carried, even in life. He felt the weight of her absence more acutely tonight. He had lost her to illness, and now he faced the possibility of losing Lily too to a scheme rooted in greed and resentment. Daniel's phone buzzed on the coffee table. A message from his attorney friend Marcus flashed across the screen. "Don't sign anything without me. This is more than guardianship. It's a power play. Vanessa's not here to negotiate. She's here to take everything." The thought tightened Daniel's chest. Vanessa had always coveted the family estate, the wealth and the influence that came with it. When Daniel's father fell ill, she had returned like a shadow, quietly undermining every safeguard his father had put in place. And now, with a clause buried in legal jargon, she was trying to rewrite history and steal the life he had worked so hard to rebuild for Lily. The storm outside intensified, slamming against the windows as if echoing his inner turmoil. He folded the letter carefully, tucking it into his jacket pocket. There could be no mistakes. Tonight he had to act not just for the estate, not just for his father's legacy, but for Lily, for her safety, for her sense of trust in the world. Lily, sensing the tension but not fully understanding it, reached for his hand. Daniel held her gently, letting her small fingers curl around his. He whispered a promise into the stormy night. No matter what happens, I will keep you safe. I will not let anyone hurt you, and I will not let them take what belongs to us." The clock ticked steadily, marking the passage of time like a heartbeat in the dark. Daniel Grayson rose and moved to the study where the old walnut desk had been polished to a soft sheen. He turned on the lamp, arranging the papers he had collected over the past few weeks. Financial records, property deeds, and correspondence, all evidence of his careful management of the estate. Tonight he would prepare. Tonight he would fight. He did not sleep. He only sat listening to the rain and the faint hum of the heater, thinking of every possible move Vanessa could make and how he could counter it. Lily slept fitfully on the sofa, her small body curled protectively around her fox. Daniel's eyes burned with resolve as he scribbled notes, devised plans, and made silent vows. Whatever it took, he would stand between Lily and the storm. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating the tall pines surrounding the estate. Daniel looked through the window, letting the flash of light guide his thoughts. He would not fail, not again. And this time, he would not be alone. By dawn, the storm had relented to a steady drizzle, leaving the grounds of the Harper estate slick and glistening. Daniel moved quietly through the halls, careful not to wake Lily, who had finally drifted into a restless sleep. His mind was a whirlwind of contingency plans, every scenario filtered through a single lens: protect his daughter at all costs. The first call came at 7:15 a.m. Vanessa's voice, smooth and disarming, slid through the line. "Good morning, cousin. I hope you slept well. We should meet today to finalize arrangements. I've already spoken with the trustee. Everything can be so much easier if you just cooperate." Daniel closed his eyes, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter. "Vanessa, I'm not interested in cooperation. You know what your father intended. You know you have no right to manipulate the trust this way." There was a pause, the faint sound of a coffee cup sliding across a table at her end. Then she said softly, but with an unmistakable edge, "Manipulate, Daniel, I'm just trying to help. But if you make things difficult, well, the judge will decide. And I have friends on the board who might be persuaded your decisions aren't in Lily's best interest." Daniel's chest tightened. Friends on the board. He realized with a sinking feeling that the betrayal ran deeper than he had imagined. His father's old allies, people he had trusted for decades, were now leaning toward Vanessa, tempted by her charm and the promise of influence. He thought of Anna, her steady hands, her calm voice in his darkest days, and imagined her urging him to stay strong. He knew he couldn't waste time in fear. By 9 a.m., he was in the study reviewing the documents again. Pages of legal language blurred under his tired eyes. Each clause seemed to twist against him, yet amidst the dense legalese, he found inconsistencies, small gaps that could be exploited in court. But finding loopholes wasn't enough. He needed allies, and fast. He called Marcus. "We need to move now. Vanessa is faster than I expected. She's already convinced part of the board to back her. I need your guidance to counter this before it's too late." Marcus's voice was steady, a lifeline in the storm of Daniel's thoughts. "First, you document everything. Every interaction, every call, every email. Then you prepare an immediate injunction. Don't confront her directly yet. Let her make the first aggressive move we need, proof of intent." Daniel exhaled slowly, feeling a measure of relief. At least he wasn't alone. But relief was fleeting. The burden of responsibility weighed on him like a physical force. He glanced at the clock. Lily would be waking soon. He couldn't let her see the fear that threatened to fracture his resolve. By 9:30 a.m., Lily was stirring, her small frame silhouetted in the morning light filtering through the curtains. Daniel crouched to her level, masking the storm, brewing inside him, with a soft smile. "Good morning, my brave girl. Did you sleep well?" Lily rubbed her eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. "I had a dream. Someone tried to take you away." Daniel's throat tightened, but he held her gaze. "That's just a dream, pumpkin. I'm right here. No one can take me away from you. Not ever." He hugged her tightly, letting her small body press against his chest. Her arms wrapped around him instinctively, and for a moment the weight of the estate, Vanessa, and the court vanished. After breakfast, he set Lily up with a drawing pad in the sunroom and went back to the study phone in hand. Every message from Marcus contained updates, suggestions, and warnings. One email in particular made Daniel's heart pound. A notarized statement from one of Vanessa's former employees hinted at her willingness to falsify documents to gain control. The stakes had escalated beyond legal maneuvering. This was personal, and it was dangerous. By late morning, Daniel had packed a small satchel legal documents, Lily's birth certificate, his father's trust paperwork, and a camera for discreetly recording interactions. He knew he couldn't leave the house. Vanessa might try to move quickly, but he had to be prepared for anything. The doorbell rang sharply at 11 a.m. Vanessa arrived radiant in a pale blue coat, her hair perfectly styled, her smile sharp as a knife. She stepped inside without waiting for invitation, as though the house already belonged to her. Daniel felt a surge of anger, but stayed composed. "Daniel," she said, her voice sweet, almost mocking. "We don't have time for games. Let's make this easy. I can take care of Lily while you sign the papers. You wouldn't want her to be unhappy, would you?" Daniel's fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. "No. I won't let you touch her, and I won't sign anything that betrays her trust or her future." Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, replaced by a cold gleam. "So be it," she said, stepping closer. But Daniel stood his ground, positioning himself between Lily and Vanessa. The tension in the room thickened, and for a moment the only sound was Lily's quiet whimper and the faint tapping of rain against the window. Daniel's resolve solidified. No matter the cunning, no matter the manipulation, he would protect Lily. Even if it meant facing Vanessa's wrath alone, even if it meant revealing the fractures in his own world, he would not back down. Tonight, the storm outside would be nothing compared to the one he was about to confront. Daniel watched Vanessa move through the living room, her presence calculated as if each step left a mark on the furniture, a claim on the home he had fought so hard to protect. He kept his hands on the edge of the desk, breathing slowly, waiting for her to make the first misstep. Every instinct screamed for confrontation, but Marcus's voice echoed in his mind. "Gather proof, don't react." Lily clutched her favorite blanket in the sunroom, peeking around the corner. Her eyes were wide, and her small hands trembled slightly, as if sensing the storm in the room. Daniel crouched to meet her gaze. "Hey, brave girl," he whispered. "I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" She nodded, biting her lip. "I'm scared, Daddy. I know," Daniel said softly. "But fear is just a shadow. Shadows can't touch us if we stick together." He stood and walked back to Vanessa, who had now perched herself on the edge of the leather sofa, opening her leather folder with a flourish. "All the documents are here," she said. "Your father wanted to make things easy for you, but I'm doing this for Lily's sake. Sign, and we can all be happy." Daniel's gaze swept over the papers, noting the subtle changes. She had introduced additional trustees with authority to override him, clauses that could grant her unilateral power if he were deemed incapable of managing the trust. Every alteration was designed to corner him, to make resistance seem irrational. "You've altered the trust," he said evenly, his voice calm but firm. "I won't sign anything you've manipulated. Lily's future isn't a bargaining chip." Vanessa's smile froze for a fraction of a second, then returned sharper, colder. "You're overreacting. I've only clarified the intentions of your father. Don't let stubborn pride endanger the girl." Daniel's fists clenched, but he forced himself to remain composed. He pulled out his phone, subtly snapping photos of each page as proof. Vanessa noticed his action, her eyes narrowing, but she said nothing, letting him finish. As soon as the photos were secured, Daniel excused himself to the study. He closed the door and sent everything to Marcus with a single message prepare injunction. Proof attached. His hands shook slightly, anger, fear, and exhaustion intermingled, but he steadied himself with a deep breath. Marcus replied almost instantly, "Good. Keep calm. Lily mustn't see your fear." Returning to the living room, Daniel found Vanessa attempting to engage Lily in conversation. The child's wide eyes followed every movement, a silent plea for protection. Daniel knelt in front of her, gently taking her hand. "Lily, stay with me. No one can touch you without my say-so." "Understand?" She nodded, tears brimming. Daniel swallowed hard, feeling the surge of helplessness that every parent knows, the heart-pounding realization that your child's safety is under threat. But he refused to let it break him. Vanessa's tone grew sharper. "You could make this easier on both of us. Don't make me go to court!" Daniel's eyes met hers, unwavering. "Go to court if you must. But I will not betray my daughter." The tension in the room reached a peak. Each word was a weapon, each silence a threat. And then, almost imperceptibly, Lily's small voice broke through. "Daddy, they're scaring me." That single phrase hit Daniel like a physical blow. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping protectively around her. "No one can scare you while I'm here," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. For the first time, the full weight of his father's estate, the legal battles, and Vanessa's manipulations pressed on him. But alongside the weight was a burning resolve, fueled by love, and the need to shield Lily from harm. Marcus called. Daniel answered quickly, speaking in a low voice. "She's escalating. She's trying to manipulate Lily," I see Marcus replied. "File a restraining injunction now. Document everything she says to your daughter. I'll have the judge review it immediately." "Daniel, this will be messy, but it's necessary." Daniel ended the call, looking down at Lily. She clutched his shirt, her small body trembling. He brushed back her hair, forcing a gentle smile. "We're going to get through this, Princess. I promise you. I will never let them take away your home or your father." As the afternoon sun cast gray shadows across the room, Daniel set up a small recorder discreetly documenting every interaction with Vanessa. Each word she spoke, each subtle threat, was proof. The betrayal cut deep, but he reminded himself evidence was their armor, courage, their shield. The day dragged on, fraught with tension, silent threats, and calculated smiles. Daniel knew that by nightfall, either he would break under the strain or emerge ready to fight for Lily with every fiber of his being. And he would not break. Night fell, and the house seemed to hold its breath. Daniel carried Lily to her bedroom, her tiny hand clutching his like a lifeline. The familiar walls, once a place of comfort, now felt tainted by Vanessa's shadow, every corner a potential trap. He tucked her into bed, smoothing her hair, whispering the same mantra he had used since the first threat. "You are safe. I am here. No one can take that from you." She blinked slowly, exhausted but reassured, and whispered, "Daddy, don't let her win." Daniel's chest tightened. He pressed his forehead against hers, feeling the fragile weight of her trust resting in his hands. "I won't," he promised. But even as he said it, a cold dread settled in his stomach. Vanessa had allies, lawyers, and influence. This was no simple legal battle. It was a war for Lily's safety, and the control of a legacy that Daniel's family had built over decades. And he knew that sometimes in wars one could lose ground before gaining it back. Returning to the study, he reviewed every document, every clause, comparing them to the original trust. Each amendment Vanessa had inserted twisted the intent-bending rules to her advantage. But the more he read, the more Daniel realized that this wasn't just greed. This was vengeance. Somewhere in Vanessa's mind, she had decided that if she couldn't have it all, no one would. He sat at the desk, rubbing his eyes, fatigue pressing against his temples. Memories of his father flashed unbidden the long evenings in the same study papers, spread out a glass of scotch in hand lessons about diligence, fairness, and integrity. And suddenly, Daniel understood the enormity of the choice before him. To act rashly could endanger Lily. To hesitate might give Vanessa the control she craved. Every decision required precision, patience, and courage. At midnight, he finally allowed himself a moment of reflection, staring at the photo of Lily's mother, Claire, on the mantel. Her eyes seemed to watch him, encouraging him to hold firm. He whispered, "I'll protect her no matter what it takes. You taught me that." The next morning brought no relief. Vanessa arrived with a forced sweetness, carrying coffee, and attempting to engage Lily in trivial conversation. Daniel observed her from the corner, noting every inflection, every calculated smile. Lily tried to be polite, but her small voice trembled, betraying her fear. Daniel intervened, gently guiding her hand to hold a stuffed rabbit. "Remember, this is your safe space," he reminded her softly. The tension reached its breaking point when Vanessa attempted to move the trust documents toward him, a subtle attempt at coercion. Daniel's heart raced, but he kept his tone even. "I will review nothing you've altered. Any discussion must go through my attorney." Her smile faltered. The facade of charm cracked for the first time, revealing a flicker of anger. "You don't understand," she snapped, her voice tight. "I'm doing what's best for her." "No," Daniel said quietly, firmly. "You are doing what's best for you. And you've made it clear that my daughter's welfare is secondary to your ambition." Lily clutched her father's leg, peeking up at him with wide eyes. Daniel bent down, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "Daddy's here," he said. "I won't let anyone hurt you." By midday, Daniel's phone buzzed with Marcus' update. The injunction was drafted and ready for filing. Relief washed over him, but it was tempered by the knowledge that Vanessa would fight back aggressively. She could appeal, manipulate, or intimidate. The next few weeks would be grueling. Despite the looming legal battle, Daniel refused to let Lily's childhood shrink under fear. He suggested a short walk in the garden, letting her run freely, while he observed from a distance. For a few minutes, the sunlight warmed them both, a fragile reprieve from the storm. Lily's laughter, though hesitant, reminded him why he could not falter. Back inside, Daniel resumed meticulous documentation. Every interaction, every hint of coercion, every manipulative gesture from Vanessa was recorded and time-stamped. This attention to detail was exhausting, yet necessary. He knew that in court, the battle would not just be about law, it would be about perception, credibility, and evidence. As evening descended, Daniel sat alone, exhausted and emotionally frayed. The house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the night air. He realized with both dread and determination that protecting Lily meant enduring sleepless nights, moments of doubt, and the gnawing anxiety of an unpredictable opponent. But for her safety and peace, he would face every challenge, endure every betrayal, and weather every storm. And somewhere deep within him, a fragile hope glimmered that love, courage, and unwavering vigilance could hold even the darkest forces at bay. The next morning, the house was tense, like the moment before a storm breaks. Daniel watched Lily move through the kitchen quietly, sipping her milk, still guarded, but trying to follow her father's instructions to stay calm. Her eyes kept darting toward the driveway, as if expecting Vanessa to appear at any second. Daniel felt a pang of helplessness. He couldn't shield her from the world entirely, but he could control his own actions, and that had to be enough. By 9:09 a.m., Marcus arrived at the house with a court-issued temporary injunction against Vanessa. Daniel reviewed the papers, each clause a lifeline in the battle for his daughter's protection. Relief should have flooded him, but it was undercut by the knowledge that legal victories often come with hidden costs. Vanessa would appeal, manipulate, and find loopholes. The real fight was far from over. Just as they were preparing to leave for the preliminary hearing, a sharp knock sounded at the front door. Daniel opened it to find Vanessa's lawyer, a tall woman with a sleek suit and an expression that bordered on smug. She carried a small stack of papers. "Mr. Harper," she began, her voice polite but sharp, "you've been served with an emergency motion. My client requests temporary custody based on new evidence." Daniel's stomach dropped. He took the papers, flipping through them carefully. The new evidence was a cleverly edited transcript implying neglect on his part, carefully omitting every instance where he had protected Lily and providing no context for the measures he had taken. It was a calculated attack designed to destabilize him emotionally, to make him question every decision he had made. Lily, sensing the tension, clutched his hand, her small fingers curling around his like a lifeline. Daniel knelt, pulling her close, trying to steady both their breaths. "Don't worry, Lily," he whispered. "We'll get through this, just like we always do." The drive to the courthouse was silent, the tension thick between Daniel and Marcus. Inside the courtroom felt colder than usual, the sunlight failing to reach the back where Daniel and Lily sat. Vanessa's lawyer presented her case with precision, emphasizing cherry-picked incidents and emotional manipulations that played on the judge's sense of doubt. Daniel's heart pounded, not with fear, but with anger and frustration. He had kept meticulous records, yet the process was slow, and the opposing side's subtle lies seemed to cloud every fact. When it was Daniel's turn, he spoke clearly, letting Marcus present the legal evidence he had prepared. Every entry, every time-stamped interaction, every recorded incident of Vanessa's manipulation was laid bare. But as he looked at Lily sitting quietly beside him, her small shoulders tense, he realized that even with facts on their side, the courtroom felt like a battlefield, where truth was only one weapon among many. Hours passed, and by the afternoon, the judge made a ruling partial victory, but not complete. The temporary injunction held, but Vanessa was granted supervised visitation. Daniel felt a bitter mix of relief and frustration. Lily would still face her manipulator, albeit under supervision, and Daniel's worst fears flared. What if she tried to manipulate the supervisors, or worse, traumatize Lily under their watch? Returning home, Daniel tried to maintain calm for Lily suggesting a short walk in the park. She hesitated but followed, running ahead in brief spurts, then returning to his side. In those moments, Daniel realized that the battle was no longer just legal. It was about resilience, about teaching Lily that she had power in her voice and choices. That evening, back in the safety of their home, Daniel sat with Lily in the living room, reviewing the events of the day. She asked questions softly, fear and curiosity intertwined. Daniel answered patiently, careful to convey truth without fear. "Some people make choices to hurt others," he said gently. "But that doesn't mean you're powerless. We take things step by step. One step at a time, we reclaim what is ours." Lily leaned against him, her small frame trembling with the day's emotional weight. Daniel stroked her hair, whispering the mantra he had repeated since the beginning, "I am here. I will protect you. Always." He realized that protection wasn't just about legal documents. It was about presence consistency and unwavering courage in the face of manipulation and betrayal. By nightfall, Daniel was exhausted, both mentally and emotionally. He reviewed the next steps in his legal strategy, detailing every contingency, every possibility, every potential misstep by Vanessa. Sleep would be short if it came at all, but he understood now that endurance, not just action, was the key. And in the quiet moments, he and Lily found solace in small rituals, reading together, practicing breathing exercises, and the faint sound of music from the piano that awaited her return. For Daniel, the battle was far from over, but in that moment he understood the core truth. Courage was not the absence of fear or setback, but the decision to keep moving forward step by step with unwavering love as a guide. The following week felt like walking through a storm. Every sound in the house made Lily flinch. Footsteps in the hall, a car door slamming outside, even the faint rustle of leaves. Daniel found himself pacing, reviewing every document, every conversation, every possible strategy, trying to anticipate Vanessa's next move. Yet despite the careful planning, he felt the weight of exhaustion pressing down on him like a physical force. Sleep was a stranger, and even when he rested, nightmares of losing Lily to Vanessa's machinations invaded his mind. Then came the call that shattered what little calm he had left. Vanessa had attempted to contact Lily through a friend's phone, leaving a message that was both manipulative and menacing. The words weren't direct threats, they were subtler, insinuating that Daniel was weak, that Lily might be better off elsewhere, that she could never truly be safe if she stayed. Daniel felt rage and helplessness warping together in a knot inside his chest. His hands shook as he dialed Marcus, who reassured him that everything was documented and would be used in court. But Daniel could feel the toll it was taking on Lily. That evening, as he tried to soothe her fears, Lily curled up in his lap, whispering, "Daddy, what if she gets me?" Her voice was small, trembling, with an innocence that shattered him. Daniel held her tightly, fighting back tears he could not afford to show. "No one is going to take you from me," he whispered. "I promise. We're going to face this together. Step by step, Lily. Step by step." But when night fell, the personal toll became unavoidable. Daniel sat alone in the study, surrounded by piles of files and printed transcripts. The quiet of the house felt oppressive, suffocating. He thought about Sarah, his late wife, about how she had believed in him, trusted him to protect their daughter, and had left too soon. The thought of her absence, combined with the daily barrage of threats and legal hurdles, pressed him to the edge. For the first time since Lily's ordeal began, Daniel felt despair creep in. He sank into his chair, head in hands, the darkness of the room mirrored in the shadowed corners of his mind. The fear of failure, the weight of responsibility, and the exhaustion of constant vigilance collided. He had always believed that as long as he acted, he could control the outcome. But reality was harsher. No amount of planning could eliminate the uncertainty, the possibility of loss, or the pain of betrayal. And yet amidst the darkness, a small glimmer emerged. A message appeared on his phone from Mrs. Evelyn Parker, a retired child psychologist and neighbor who had quietly observed his efforts. "Daniel," it read, "I've been following your progress with Lily. She trusts you. You are giving her stability. If you need help, I can provide guidance and techniques to strengthen her resilience." It was a simple note, yet it hit him like a lifeline thrown across a turbulent river. The next morning, Daniel contacted Evelyn. She arrived within the hour, carrying folders of exercises, child-focused therapies, and small tools designed to teach children to navigate fear and build confidence. Together they spoke gently with Lily, who at first hesitated, eyes wary, then slowly engaged with the exercises. She colored practiced small breathing techniques and even spoke about her feelings, naming them as Evelyn encouraged. Daniel watched in quiet awe, realizing that while he could not eliminate all the dangers in the world, he could equip Lily with the strength to face them. By evening, Daniel felt a subtle but meaningful shift. The house no longer felt like a battlefield, at least not entirely. Lily smiled, more, even laughed quietly while practicing small songs on the piano bench, and Daniel felt the tiniest spark of hope reemerge. He still worried, still faced endless documents, court dates, and manipulations, but he recognized that resilience wasn't about perfection. It was about survival, courage, and the slow rebuilding of trust and confidence. That night, Daniel stayed with Lily as she slept. He whispered the same words he had repeated every day since the ordeal began. "I am here. I will protect you. Always." She murmured in her sleep, a fragile echo of security, and for the first time in days, Daniel allowed himself a quiet exhale, letting the brief peace anchor him. He understood now that the fight was far from over, but hope, steady, fragile, and luminous, had returned. The morning of the court hearing arrived with a chill that pressed against the windows. Daniel made breakfast for Lily with deliberate care, moving slowly to avoid the tension that usually accompanied their mornings. Pancakes shaped like stars, and hearts, a warm mug of milk, and soft music in the background, small rituals to anchor them both in a semblance of normalcy. Lily's small hands trembled slightly as she stirred her cocoa, but she looked up at her father and smiled, the kind of quiet bravery that both broke and bolstered Daniel's heart. When the hour came to leave, Daniel dressed Lily in her favorite lavender sweater, tying her hair back carefully. "Remember," he said gently, "you are strong. You have a voice, and it matters." Lily nodded, gripping his hand, her small fingers curled around his. Daniel felt the weight of responsibility as they drove to the courthouse, a tension so thick it seemed to press the steering wheel into his palms. The courtroom was cold and imposing, yet familiar faces offered quiet reassurance. Marcus, his attorney, gave him a small nod. Evelyn had arrived early, her presence like a shield of calm. Daniel held Lily's hand throughout the preliminary hearing, explaining quietly, in measured words, when her eyes flickered with fear. Vanessa's legal team sat across the room, their confident smirks like a challenge thrown into the air. Daniel felt the old fear rising, the fear that despite all precautions, something could go wrong, but he forced himself to breathe, to focus on what mattered: protecting Lily. When the judge called the case, Daniel stepped forward. Vanessa's accusations were pointed, manipulative, and filled with distortions of truth. But Daniel had prepared meticulously. Each claim was countered with evidence documentation and the recordings he had secured. Marcus spoke with precision, guiding the court through the facts, and Evelyn quietly sat near Lily, ready to support her if the child needed comfort. At one point, Vanessa attempted to directly appeal to Lily, speaking in soft tones meant to confuse and coerce. Lily froze eyes wide, and Daniel instinctively bent down, whispering a single sentence: "Remember, you are safe. You are loved. Say what you need to say." And she did. With a small, quivering voice, she affirmed her desire to stay with her father, recounting only what she remembered of the threats and manipulations. The courtroom held its breath, the fragility of a child's voice carrying more weight than any adult argument. The hearing stretched into hours. Daniel's resolve was tested not only by Vanessa's relentless legal maneuvers, but by the creeping exhaustion that threatened to dull his focus. At one point, he closed his eyes for a fraction of a second, allowing himself a brief mental escape, a place where he remembered holding Lily in the quiet of their home, telling her stories of resilience and hope. That memory became his anchor. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the judge ruled. The temporary custody and protective orders were affirmed. Vanessa's attempts to manipulate the system were curtailed, and a clear path for continued safety for Lily was established. Daniel felt an overwhelming flood of relief, but it was tempered by the understanding that vigilance would always be necessary. Legal victories were not an end, they were part of a longer journey. Walking out of the courthouse, Lily clung to Daniel's hand tightly. Outside, the sunlight fell in warm, golden beams across the steps, and for the first time in months, Daniel allowed himself to smile fully. He lifted Lily into his arms, spinning her gently as she laughed, the sound ringing like fragile bells. Passers-by smiled at the sight, a man and his daughter battered but unbroken, claiming a moment of joy, despite all they had endured. That evening, back at home, Daniel and Lily returned to the rituals they had rebuilt: a quiet dinner, soft music, and the small sanctuary of the piano bench. Lily tentatively pressed her fingers to the keys, playing a simple melody she had been practicing, her small hands steadier than ever. Daniel added a deep, grounding chord beneath her tune, the sound filling the room with warmth. They were not just surviving. They were learning to live again. As the day faded into night, Daniel held Lily close, whispering the words he had repeated so many times, now imbued with even more meaning. I am here. I will protect you. Always. Lily nestled against him, a soft, trusting weight in his arms. The storm had not passed completely, but they had endured it together, and that endurance had become a new kind of strength. For the first time in what felt like forever, Daniel allowed himself to believe that healing, though slow and delicate, was possible. The weeks that followed the hearing were quiet but deliberate. Daniel focused on rebuilding not just the physical safety of their home, but the emotional foundation that had been shaken. Each morning began with small routines: breakfast together, gentle stretches, and reading aloud from stories of courage and kindness. Lily's laughter began to return in fragments, soft giggles over a misplaced word, delighted squeals, when her fingers pressed a surprising note on the piano keys. These small victories felt monumental to Daniel, proof that the light could return even after darkness. One afternoon, Daniel arranged a meeting with the local music teacher, Clara James, a woman in her late 20s with a patient demeanor and an almost magical way of coaxing children out of their shells. Lily has something inside her, she said, eyes bright, a spark that just needs room to breathe. Let's give her that space. With Daniel observing silently, Clara guided Lily through scales and simple songs, always encouraging her to play at her own pace. Slowly, Lily began to add small flourishes, mimicking the delicate gestures her mother had once taught her. Daniel could barely hold back tears as he listened to the sound of his daughter's fingers on the keys, a reminder of resilience, of memory, and of hope. Despite the progress at home, Daniel faced challenges beyond the piano. Vanessa continued to send legal notices, attempts at intimidation, and even veiled threats, testing his patience and resolve. Every time a letter arrived, Daniel felt a surge of old fear, but he no longer allowed it to dominate him. He responded calmly, methodically, with Marcus at his side. Each correspondence was met with evidence, precaution, and an unwavering focus on Lily's safety. The man who once would have been consumed by rage and anxiety had learned restraint. At night, after Lily fell asleep, Daniel often sat at the piano alone. He would run his fingers over the keys, remembering the melodies Sarah had played, and the little ways Lily had echoed them. These moments were bittersweet, a reminder of loss, yet also of love that endured. In these quiet hours, he wrote letters to Sarah in his journal, recounting Lily's progress, the moments of bravery, and the triumphs of everyday life. Writing became his private solace, a bridge between the grief that lingered and the hope he now nurtured. Months passed, and Lily's confidence blossomed. She learned to voice her feelings, to express when she felt unsafe or anxious, and to seek comfort from the people she trusted. Daniel celebrated each step forward, understanding that true healing was never instantaneous, but built in careful, consistent moments. They attended therapy sessions, music lessons, and small community gatherings, forging connections that strengthened both father and daughter. One crisp spring morning, Daniel arranged for a recital at the local community center. He wanted Lily to experience not just the music, but the courage of standing in front of an audience, claiming her space in the world. As the day approached, Lily's excitement mingled with nerves. Daniel offered gentle encouragement. "It's your music, your story. Play it how you feel it, and nothing else matters." The recital day arrived, the hall filled with parents, neighbors, and a few familiar faces from therapy and school. When Lily's name was called, she walked onto the stage, shoulders squared, her hands trembling just slightly, but her determination shining through. Daniel sat in the front row, heart-pounding eyes fixed on her. The first notes were soft, but certain, followed by a steady, flowing melody that carried both sadness and joy. The music told a story of loss, of struggle, of courage, and ultimately of resilience. When the final note lingered in the quiet hall, the audience erupted in applause. Lily's eyes glistened, a mixture of relief and pride, as she glanced toward Daniel. He rose, clapping steadily, tears slipping down his cheeks. Afterward, backstage, he knelt to her, level hands on her shoulders. "I'm proud of you," he said simply. "Not because you played perfectly, but because you faced your fear." Lily hugged him tightly, her small arms wrapping around him with trust and love. As the seasons changed, life settled into a rhythm of healing and growth. Daniel maintained his work commitments, but family always came first. Together they created a home filled with music, laughter, and safety, a place where love was a constant and fear had no foothold. The lessons of courage, persistence, and trust became embedded in their lives, shaping Lily's childhood and Daniel's parenthood in profound ways. Evenings often ended with piano practice, side by side, father and daughter creating harmonies that were imperfect but beautiful, a testament to their journey. Daniel would look at Lily, her small face focused and serene, and whisper the words that had become their mantra, "I am here. I will always be here." She would respond with a quiet, confident smile. "I know, Dad." Though the shadows of the past occasionally lingered, they no longer dictated the rhythm of their lives. The house echoed not with fear, but with resilience, love, and the music of a life reclaimed. Daniel had faced betrayal, loss, and the weight of responsibility, yet he had emerged not broken, but steadfast. And in his daughter's eyes he saw the promise of a future unburdened by fear, a testament to the power of courage, presence, and unwavering love. The story of Daniel and Lily is more than a narrative of survival. It is a meditation on resilience, love, and the quiet power of presence. At its core, this story emphasizes the profound impact that one steadfast adult can have in a child's life, particularly when that child has faced trauma and fear. Throughout the journey, we witness not only the struggle against external threats, but also the internal battles of grief, guilt, and self-doubt that Daniel faces as he navigates parenthood alone. One of the central emotional threads of the story is the transformation of fear into courage. Lily's initial hesitation, her trembling hands on the piano, and the quiet apprehension in her daily life illustrate the lingering effects of trauma. These manifestations are common in children who have experienced loss or exposure to threatening situations. Daniel's approach, patient, consistent, and respectful of her boundaries, demonstrates a key principle in child recovery. Healing is not achieved by forcing progress, but by providing safety understanding and a reliable presence. The narrative vividly shows that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward despite it. Daniel's journey also highlights the challenges of adult responsibility under pressure. The story reframes the traditional heroic parent trope by portraying Daniel not as a flawless protector, but as a deeply human individual prone to worry and self-recrimination. The added elements of betrayal manipulation by Vanessa and the legal threats against him intensified the stakes, illustrating how external pressures can exacerbate internal struggles. Yet Daniel's growth comes from learning restraint, strategic thinking, and emotional regulation. His ability to pause, observe, and respond calmly to threats reflects a critical life lesson in moments of high stress. Deliberate and thoughtful action often achieves more than impulsive reaction. The father-daughter bond is at the heart of the story, and it is portrayed with remarkable nuance. Unlike stories that resolve conflict with grand gestures, this narrative emphasizes small, repeated actions, sitting together at breakfast, practicing piano scales, sharing quiet conversations that cumulatively create a sense of stability and trust. This mirrors real-life psychological research, which shows that consistent nurturing routines help children regain a sense of control and security after trauma. The simple gestures, Daniel placing his hand on Lily's shoulder, guiding her fingers on the piano keys, or whispering assurances before bedtime, are imbued with profound significance. They symbolize continuity, presence, and love, forming the emotional scaffolding upon which Lily rebuilds confidence. Another crucial aspect is the interplay of grief and memory. Daniel and Lily both carry the absence of Sarah in their lives, yet the story reframes loss not as a void to be filled or denied, but as a source of memory that guides, informs, and strengthens. Lily's decision to play her mother's song at the recital, and Daniel's support in allowing her to do so, reflects the healthy integration of grief, honoring the past while actively engaging in the present. For readers, this conveys a powerful message about the necessity of processing grief openly and constructively, rather than suppressing it. Memory, when approached thoughtfully, can serve as a bridge to resilience rather than a chain to despair. The story also sheds light on societal responsibility. The presence of therapists, neighbors, teachers, and community programs emphasizes that recovery from trauma is not solely an individual task. It is a communal effort that requires empathy, attention, and active participation from multiple layers of support. Daniel's engagement with local programs, school initiatives, and community centers reflects a broader truth. Protecting and nurturing vulnerable individuals, especially children, relies on both personal commitment and social infrastructure. This narrative implicitly advocates for stronger community involvement in child welfare and education, highlighting how collective action can amplify the impact of individual care. Emotionally, the story invites readers to engage deeply with feelings of tension, fear, and ultimately relief and joy. The dramatic peaks, threats from Vanessa, the legal battles, the courtroom tension serve to heighten empathy, making the subsequent moments of calm and accomplishment more poignant. By juxtaposing these extremes, the narrative teaches readers about the elasticity of human emotion, how despair and hope can coexist, and how endurance through hardship often leads to profound satisfaction and personal growth. From a practical perspective, several lessons emerge. First, the importance of presence, being consistently available to a child in moments of vulnerability, has far-reaching consequences. Second, the value of patience and strategic action. Daniel's careful navigation of legal threats demonstrates the power of measured, informed decision-making. Third, the role of incremental progress. Small daily steps toward healing, whether through therapy, creative expression, or communication accumulate to produce meaningful transformation. Fourth, the significance of community and professional support. Therapists, educators, and neighbors all contribute vital perspectives and resources that cannot be replaced by one individual alone. On a broader social level, the story encourages reflection on issues of child safety, domestic conflict, and the responsibilities of guardianship. It underscores the necessity for legal frameworks, psychological support, and community vigilance to protect vulnerable individuals from abuse, manipulation, and neglect. Yet it also reminds readers that the law alone is not enough. Emotional intelligence, consistency, and love are equally essential for real recovery. Finally, the story leaves us with a message of hope. Even after trauma, betrayal, or loss, life can regain rhythm, joy, and meaning. Healing is a process often slow and punctuated by setbacks, but it is achievable when guided by patience, courage, and human connection. For readers, the practical takeaway is clear. Whether in parenting, mentorship, or general interpersonal relationships, presence, empathy, and consistency can be transformative. Facing challenges with integrity, seeking support when needed, and honoring the small victories along the way can allow individuals and communities to overcome adversity with resilience and grace. Ultimately, Daniel and Lily's journey is a testament to the enduring strength of love, the importance of presence, and the quiet yet profound power of resilience. It reminds us that while life can deliver profound hardships, hope and healing are always possible, often in the smallest gestures repeated consistently. In applying these lessons today, we are invited to be vigilant, compassionate, and patient, not only with those who are vulnerable, but also with ourselves as we navigate our own struggles,